I'd like to call this meeting of the Cunningham Town Board to order for Monday, April 1st, 2019. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Brown.
Here.
Hazen. Here. Hersey.
Here.
Jacobson.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Wu. Chair Marvel.
Here. Approval of minutes from the previous meeting of March 4th, 2019. Is there a motion for approval?
I move to approve the minutes.
I'll second that motion.
Moved by Sharice, seconded by Jared. Any corrections? Yes, Dennis.
Let's see. There were mentioned, I think it was in the minutes that we would have a town meeting coming up. And are you going to talk about that? Okay, all right. And I guess what I want to know is, you mentioned that we should attend, but usually I haven't thought that that was required, but I just was wondering about it.
I'll touch on it at my officer's report.
Okay. Any other corrections? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion is approved. Are there any additions to the agenda? Okay. Does anyone wish to address the Cunningham Town Board? Okay. Committee to verify bills, Town Fund and GA Fund, General Assistance Fund.
So town bills for today, we have from the town fund $70,155.02 in expenditures. From the general assistance fund, we have $85,019.05, and that brings us to a total of $155,174.07. You received the bills on Thursday, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Okay.
I'll move approval of the town fund and the general assistance fund.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Dean. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Officers report.
Well, hopefully we'll get you out of here because it's two brief meetings. General assistance participants, we're basically leveling out at about 110, which is great news. I was thinking we'd average closer to 125. So we're at 112, up from 111 last month. We seem to be kind of bumping up and down. We'll actually have a number of case closures this month, so we'll see how it works out if we stay level or not. We are seeing a number of folks getting sufficient income. We've also had a slew of folks who have been approved for SSI payments, so both of those are positive developments. The data is actually almost exactly the same as last month, so I won't go over that piece. For homeless assistance, we did serve 13 households this past month, up from 6. 7 of those were homeless households moved into housing with rental assistance. 6 were avoided homelessness with eviction prevention assistance. And we are seeing a number of people from the who are in subsidized housing. So there's a larger number, I think 3 households in total had subsidized housing. And so just working with the Housing Authority, in the new administrative code that's being proposed, the Housing Authority will actually have deposit assistance that comes from Housing Authority to allow people to pay a deposit over a longer time frame, so that will help. And in terms of, the only other announcement I have is the annual Cunningham Town Meeting will be Tuesday, so a week from tomorrow at 6 o'clock, not 7. It'll be here in the Urbana City Council chambers. We will be presenting on the financial state of the township, looking at the last 20 to 30 years of historical data, both on poverty and need, so what it looks like in Urbana, as well as particularly looking at the caseload and how it has looked. I think we have data going back to 1975. We actually have data going back to the beginning of time, if I want to take it out of this little handwritten blue book that sits in the corner. But in terms of the data that I think would be relevant for our discussion, looking at since I was born is probably long enough of a time frame to look at. So, and then we also be looking at the programs and how they've changed, including what medical payments used to look like, how that changed over time. We have data on the levy that goes back 15 years, what the levies look like. It's the differences between the town fund and the general assistance fund have varied quite a bit. And then what the expenditures, the actual dollar figures expended per year on general assistance, which does vary as well. So I would encourage you to come and invite your friends and neighbors. Also inviting the public to come. We'll be sending out an announcement tomorrow, we have a Facebook space now, and we've been promoting through that space as well. So I'd like people to get involved in the future of their township, and that'll be a good opportunity to do so. I think the assessor side will also be talking a little bit big picture about bringing the assessor's office into the digital age, going online, what that means for customers and how they'll be able to access. And I think there's a real interest in looking at, as we approach a quad year, what that's going to, what does that mean so that taxpayers and property owners and the renters who pay into those property taxes are informed about what's to come in 2020. So I encourage folks to get involved, and certainly the town board members are welcome to come, although you will be equal to everyone else who comes. Rather than official town board members, you will be members of the community. Any questions? Go ahead.
Has any referenda come from the citizens? Sometimes these things do come up and are discerned in the town board meetings.
Yeah, I believe they would have had to put it on the agenda in advance, and we do not have any referenda on the agenda.
Okay. Any other questions?
Charlie?
Yeah, I'll just point out that the voters at the town board meeting need to be registered voters in Cunningham Township. That's the only requirement for them to be able to cast a vote, but everybody is welcome to attend.
Yep, it's open to the public. And, is it broadcast on UPTV, do you know? Or is that something we should look into?
I think we're trying to arrange for that.
Okay, that'd be great.
Dennis?
Give us the date again.
It is Tuesday, April 9th, which is a week from tomorrow at 6 o'clock here in Urbana City Council chambers.
Mayor?
Yes.
Well, I was going to add is that one thing to consider next year, if there's no requirement that it be at 6 o'clock, that is the earliest time that one may have it. We might want to consider setting next year's
Okay.
2020 for 7 o'clock, if that's a more convenient time.
Okay. I expect, that the entire meeting will probably last about 45 minutes, just in case you're planning for dinner. It'll be pre-dinner.
Okay. Great. Anything else?
I think that's it. William, did you have anything?
Good evening. Well, I guess a lot of it was touched on the last town board meeting as far as us moving towards more digital records. I don't know if any of you called in the last couple of weeks, but if you call for a property record card, instead of us actually walking to go get the card, we have about half of them now scanned. So we can actually go right into the system and pull it up. Now, we're going to kind of slow down on the scanning for a minute because we were noticing values that were maybe not to our liking, as we would say. So what we're trying to do is sort of spend a little attention looking at those values to see how fair they are for the taxpayers of Urbana. So that's going to kind of delay us, but we'll still make the December cutoff as far as having everything scanned. The goal is to have it all scanned, so maybe by, I'm hoping next summer, we can have it where some of these things will actually be accessed by the website. As of now, we have less than 30% of those senior exemptions we mailed out. Less than 30% are actually still outstanding. So a lot of citizens are actually returning these things, so that's pretty good. That'll actually save us some money on the second round as far as sending out the information reminding anyone who has not sent it in already. Let's see, scanning cards, Actually, that's about it, because everything else, I can't actually complain about anything. It's kind of moving on track really well.
And speaking is William Harris, Deputy Assessor? Is that your title?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Questions? Sharice?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment, because I just want to say, as far as the senior exemption thing, you may not have to do another round. I don't know about anyone else. My mother didn't get any of her tax information until the end of February. And I think a lot of people wait for them, to get their taxes done. So probably after April, you'll probably get a lot I know that's when we'll get ours in.
Yeah.
So you'll probably get more, mainly because just getting their taxes done and stuff like that is going to be, well, it was an issue for my household, for my mom's household. So that may be a reason too why there's still so many outstanding.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, yes.
Oh, so I just want to give William a chance to speak, but we did have a quarterly financial report, so I just have a couple of words about that, and then I'll be finished with my report. So hopefully this is easier to see than the last one. We worked on our formatting. So you have 3 big pages. Essentially what you see here, and I think I'll start at the bottom line, which is the supervisor, as we've spent 50, so we should be at 75% essentially, or under, ideally. Supervisor is at 52%, assessor is at 65%, this is of expenses. Town fund is at 75%, town fund other, where a lot of our shared expenses come, and then the total GA fund is slightly over at 81%. And then our total is pretty much where we expect it to be, since this is through March 27th, and there may be some other receipts, 69%, and that's 70 to 75% is what we would be looking for. I have made notes in the far column, as I will tend to do. Any place where, there's a significant over 75%. Again, on interest, we're doing really well since we renegotiated interest on savings, and we continue to work on that piece. In terms of expenses, there's just a few places that are worth mentioning. We've seen an increase in employees. I have more part-time employees on my side to try to accommodate the school schedules and work schedules and childcare schedules of my employees. So that's actually by their request that they be working part-time, but it does mean there's more folks. There's also some small increase in our rate, unemployment compensation rate. The assessor training has been higher than expected. We did hire a chief deputy, Wayne hired a chief deputy assessor who is out of state. I think William's very qualified for the position. It does mean that he has to do a number of trainings and certifications in the state of Illinois that we had not anticipated, because we had anticipated recruiting from the state of Illinois. The Carl case went to trial, as you know. It was very difficult to figure out exactly what we should anticipate in that case, so we are over on our legal expenses to be expected in this case. We saw a rise in new home building in Urbana, so we are paying more to build Urbana. That's ultimately, at least in the scheme of things, supposed to be a good thing for us. Under computer software, page 2, we have the assessor's office has CAMA software that was a one-time expense, and there's some overlap between the old software and the new. The equipment purchases are up. The assessor side bought new computers and a scanner to help with the digitization. The computers were simply moving at too slow a pace to support the record scanning. We have been restructuring our space pretty significantly. You can come over and visit us. We're trying to pack more people into a small space. So been a lot of restructuring and reconfiguring of spaces, moving lots of files downstairs, getting some new office furniture. I think ultimately, because the supervisor side, we have now 4 volunteers and 6 interns in addition to our staff, so just trying to accommodate everyone. Ultimately, we are able to serve more people, but it means office supplies and some of the space restructuring. We changed to a new phone system. There was we had a 2-month overlap in that phone system. We had budgeted for 0. And we have had to buy additional phones for the staff. And then if you go to page 3, we continue to see we have constrained our bus pass program, so we're very clear that the bus passes only go to those who are confirmed for general assistance or housing assistance. As you'll see, we have more housing assistance than we anticipated, even with a larger budget. So we're at 147% of our housing assistance dollars. We had only budgeted 53,000 essentially, but we had only budgeted 36,000. We've spent 53,000. Luckily, we've come under on our personal allowances slightly, and we did not do a disbursement to Courage Connection for the shelter as there was a change in that plan. So that's $50,000 that essentially we've been able to move to support people in homeless assistance, which is a similar ethos for that money, but certainly a different line item. As I mentioned, we have a high demand for bus passes. This is a really important part of what we do, and I intend to meet with the MTD leadership and the board to talk a little bit about what the MTD could do to further support mobility for low-income families in our community, because it's a big piece of our expenditures each year. So essentially, I think things overall are healthy because we've been able to come under on administrative costs and some of our other facilities improvement costs, and we have gone over in the areas of especially the rental assistance and eviction prevention. We are taking the approach, as is Andy. Andy is at about the same percentage. I checked with him 2 weeks ago, and he's at about 150% of his budget as well. I think both of us have been messaging that we're in the middle of an affordable housing crisis in our community, and we can see this in the programs that we have. Both his office and my office has reallocated funds from other line items to support rather than limiting those programs. I think the programs continue to be really important part of vitality within the community and preventing homelessness and keeping people from being street homeless. So I continue to support even though we are over the budget in that regard. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the quarterly financial report. Eric had one.
Yes.
So typically I will think about being on an economic par somehow with Champaign. And so you mentioned Andy. And your overall impression is that they're in a comparable situation relative to their levy covering what they need to do, as we are?
Oh, no. They have half the levy with twice the people. So a big piece, so Andy that township has chosen to only serve disabled participants in general assistance. So have far fewer, I think, don't quote me, but it's within, the 20 to 35 range of participants for general assistance, and we're looking at bouncing between 100 and 120. So it's different in that way, and that if you live in Champaign and you're temporarily unemployed, medical emergency, family emergency, et cetera, or layoffs from, and you're not receiving unemployment, essentially you don't have an option. So Urbana residents are lucky to have a safety net that just doesn't exist in Champaign for people who are temporarily unemployed. That said, it's my opinion that I really feel like the city of Champaign Township is a really strong partner of ours, and they do a lot with what they're able to do, and they've been able to control their administrative costs, and really he's continued to increase his program costs and his program impact. So we meet at least monthly, if not more often, to discuss how we can make sure that we bring our programs together as much as possible. But there's a long and distinguished history of why City of Champaign Township is in the position they're in that has a lot to do with a lawsuit and tax caps. Essentially, they were not providing general assistance for a number of years and were sued in a class action lawsuit against them for that, and they had to provide that assistance, but they're stuck under tax caps in terms of their levy. So they do what they can.
Bill?
I just wanted to follow up on something I mentioned last time about the earned income tax credit. I know very few of our clients would probably qualify for it, but if you did have earned income, I plugged some numbers into an online calculator. And say you had $4,000 in income early in the year before you ran into trouble, your earned income tax credit would be $1,610. That's money coming back. So that's a chunk that could be used for, getting back into housing or something like that. So I know we can't offer tax advice and we aren't attorneys, but if we have anybody trained or willing to be trained on just recognizing situations where that might apply, because you can also go back several years and file amended tax returns.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a good point.
Where they
the
might
amendment.
recognize where those kind of things might apply, and then send them to appropriate people to figure out what they can get.
Yeah, so your statement last month was well timed. Obviously, it's tax season, and so I have an intern who's calling through. Many of our folks don't have income and haven't had income, but there's a number of folks who do, and we have record of that. So essentially calling through and letting them know two things. One is that there's support for people to file their taxes. I know there's support at the library, and there's several other locations. And the second is that they should go ahead and get an extension. So, especially at this time, they could go ahead and get an extension and still file. There won't be penalty if there's taxes owed to them. So but I didn't think about the amended returns from past. So once they are meeting with one of the volunteers who's supporting them, I think that's something that we can mention.
And sometimes also the people that they're staying with might qualify for an earned income credit or an extra deduction because they're helping to support the people they're staying with. So
Yeah, it's
just the
important.
overall tax kind of checkup would be good for a lot of people.
It's important for the public to know that if you have someone who's living with you, even if they're an adult, and you're paying over half of their living expenses, which includes any kind of rental subsidy, food subsidies, et cetera, they're considered a dependent based on the IRS, and so they wouldn't file a tax return, but you could. And I certainly have done that in the past, and I've realized, it's been of significant benefit and helped to pay for some of that subsidy.
And just to add to that, if you're, depending on your relatedness, if, say, you're staying with a grandparent or something, they could also qualify for the earned income credit, which is even bigger than dependent usually, depending on whether they're making money, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we're always happy to take volunteers as well, if there's someone who wants to specifically work with our participants to help. I just know there's certain services that are available in the community, but we would be happy to have more personalized support at any point for our participants.
Dennis?
Could you touch upon locations where a person could receive assistance in filling out a tax form if they were low income? Or is there such a, you were mentioning the library is one place, is that
Yeah,
true?
I'll have to look. The intern who's working on this compiled a list, and I don't want to give out false information. But there's several places in town that support people during tax season. So
Okay, so that's interesting to me.
when we
because-
call folks, we'll be calling and letting them know where they can go get support for their taxes.
Okay, because I was only aware of one place that's over in Champaign. I didn't realize that there was a place here in.
I believe there is one at the library, but I have to look to see if it's just for seniors or if it's for all.
Oh, okay. Very good.
Okay.
Do you know if Salt and Light has anything?
Honestly, I just haven't had a chance to check in with the interns. I will make sure that
I know they
look at
have
it.
in the past. I don't know if they have this year or not.
Okay, that's great.
Are we on to unfinished business? None?
There's
Any new
none.
business?
No.
Okay, with no further business before this body, this meeting is adjourned. We'll see you next Tuesday. Well, we'll be here next Monday. We'll also be here next Tuesday. So.